All right, let's go ahead and call the Senate to order. Sergeant at Arms will please secure the chamber doors. Members, please take your seats. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. President.
All right, Senators, we are very pleased this morning to have the Reverend Dr. Pat Allen of St. Paul's United Methodist Church in Kensington, Maryland, guest of the distinguished senator from the 18th District. Please rise for the invocation.
Let us pray. Holy One, as we accept your invitation to be a part of this day, may the work for which we have gathered be a source of hope for our co-laborers and our communities. May the conversations of this day create pathways of common ground and safe spaces for differing of opinions. May we embrace the opportunity to be agents and vessels of transformation in ways that enhance the quality of life for all in our care. As we wrestle with those things for which solutions elude us, guide us to that which has only been dreamed of and help it become our reality. And at the conclusion of this day, may we rest in the assurance that we have given the best of ourselves for the greater good of all. May it be so. May it be so.
Thank you. That was wonderful. Thank you. Chair recognizes the senator from the 18th District.
Thank you, Mr. President. It sounds like Reverend Allen knows how much work we have to do today, so we appreciate the prayer. Reverend Allen is a leader in our community and just an incredible pastor in Kensington, Maryland. Kensington, Maryland was one of the first suburbs of Washington, D.C. to develop, and as was common at the time, a number of denominations sprung up in Kensington and later synagogues as well. So we thank Reverend Allen, and I move that her prayer be journalized this morning.
Without objection, most certainly we will journalize the wonderful remarks this morning. And she has an important engagement this morning, so she said she's got to jump. So we thank you very much and wish you safe travels. Yes, excellent. All right, if we've journalized the prayer, have we all recorded our presence in the chamber? It appears almost so. Vice Chair of Budget and Tax. All right, the clerk will take the call. With 45 members in the chamber and a quorum being present, the Senate of Maryland is now in session. Senators, we have a few resolutions today. We're going to start with the senator from District 11. Do we have our guest from Pikesville? Excellent. Chair recognizes the senator from Baltimore County as our champion basketball players enter the chamber.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Colleagues, I am really very, very happy to welcome here today the Pikesville Panthers, my alma mater. Pikesville has been a dominant force in women's basketball, posting an impressive 23-5 record this year and winning state championships in 2019 and 2022, and I suspect the only reason they didn't take home the title in 2021 was because the games were canceled because of COVID. Colleagues, today I ask you to join me in congratulating these student athletes once again, because fittingly on March 11th, District 11's own Pikesville Panthers brought home the 1A State Women's Championship, defeating Mountain Ridge High School by a score of 38-33. They are supported by their fabulous administrators, families, and classmates. The Panthers are joined today by Assistant Principal Sam Buckley, Head Coach Michael Dukes, and Assistant Coaches Kevin Speaks, Gordon Outlaw, and Bishop Kavia Elliott. Congratulations, Pikesville Panthers, on yet another state championship.
The clerk will call the roll. Excuse me, the clerk will read the resolution in full.
Be it hereby known to all that the Senate of Maryland offers sincerest congratulations to Pikesville High School girls varsity basketball team in recognition of winning the MPSSAA Class 1A state championship. We applaud your outstanding season and wish you many more. Congratulations. The entire membership extends its best wishes on this memorable occasion and directs this resolution be presented on the 29th day of March, 2023.
The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their vote? If so, the clerk will take the call. To the lady athletes of the Pikesville High School girls varsity basketball team, congratulations on your Class 1A state championship. You are also joined not just by the senator from Baltimore County, but also the chief of staff for the Senate. Sally Rubb is a alumna from Pikesville High School. So you all have great pedigree of folks ahead of you, and I'm sure you're following in those great footsteps well. So congratulations on your championship. Thank you all for being here. And we did have to reschedule, so we're so glad it was able to work out. We were supposed to be last Friday, so thank you all for adjusting and hopefully not missing too many classes, right? Excellent. All right, let's go ahead and recognize the senator from Prince George's.
Thank you, Mr. President. And colleagues, it's my honor today to stand and congratulate Pat Lawson-Muse on a well-earned retirement after 40 years with NBC4 TV in Washington, D.C. Pat is an Emmy Award-winning anchor who, together with Barbara Harrison, made history in the mid-1990s when they formed the first all-female local TV news and anchor team in the nation. She doesn't know this, but when I moved from Montana, she was one of the first African Americans that I saw on television news. And so I'm really excited to be a part of acknowledging her today. In 1994, since 1994, she's been the heart and face of NBC4's Food for Families campaign, which has fed thousands of families, veterans, and senior citizens throughout the year. Muse, whose broadcast career began in radio, has been inducted into the National Association of Television Arts and Sciences Silver Circle. She's been recognized by the American Association of Women, the National Association of Black Journalists, the International Television and Film Festival of New York, National Congress of Black Women in DC's chapter, and Minority Business and Professional Network. Please join me, colleagues, in saluting Pat for representing local TV broadcasting profession and the many diverse communities in and around the state of Maryland with integrity, dignity, uncompromising ethics, and unwavering compassion. Mr. President, I'd like to just congratulate her and ask that the resolution be read in full, and I would be remiss if I didn't mention that she is the wife of, permission to use a senator's name,
Senator may proceed.
the distinguished senator from District 26, C. Anthony Muse. Congratulations.
The clerk will read the resolution.
Be it hereby known to all that the Senate of Maryland offers its sincerest congratulations to Pat Lawson-Muse in recognition of 40 years with NBC4 TV in Washington, D.C., celebrating years of excellence in broadcast journalism and service to the region. The entire membership extends its best wishes on this memorable occasion and directs this resolution be presented on this 29th day of March, 2023.
The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded? If we could help our friends from Prince George's here make sure we get excellent. All right. The clerk will take the call. Well, Ms. Pat Lawson-Muse, we congratulate you for 40 years with NBC4 TV. And I hear from the good senator that she started working when she was just 5 years old. So that's the word. Congratulations on such an incredible career. We're just so thankful and honored by your presence to be here today. Thank you. Excellent. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. All right. We have one addition. Oh, yes. Oh, of course. Yes, Senator from the 26th.
Just for a second point of personal privilege, please. I do want to thank you, this wonderful senator from the 25th, for your kindness and for the entire Senate for honoring Pat today. 40 years. And in those 40 years, She has interviewed everyone from Nelson Mandela to Pope John Paul, Queen of England, and on the list goes for those 40 years. But she never lost a sense of who she was. She took care of the homeless. She took care of feeding thousands of people. She took hardships home that she reported on and tried to do something about it for people. She not only did that, but in closing, she worked some days, 7 days a week for 33 years that she put up with me for 33 years. So you know she has to have some God in her. Am I right? Right. Yeah, a lot of God. Right? A lot of God. Yeah, and him too, right? And in those 33 years, most days she would work 7 days a week, because once she got off of work, Saturdays was church activities, and then Sunday, as the first lady of the church, sometimes we had 4 worship services in a row, and she would be there with them. Then she became the first lady of 282 churches of the denomination over which I preside as the bishop, and she's worked. So now she gets a chance to work, and I just wanted to say from the floor of the Senate, I'm proud of you, I love you, and I'm thankful. Thank you for that point of personal privilege, and thank you all for honoring her.
The senator and I went to the same school of a relationship where you marry up, right? I know that drill. Thank you so much, and congratulations again. Yes. All right, Chair recognizes the senator from Baltimore City.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just would like the body to help me welcome in the gallery students from the 41st District Liberty Elementary School. They are part of the Future Leaders program, and we want to commend them on their team building, their strong interpersonal skills and resiliency, and very thankful to have you with us today.
Excellent. Welcome, Liberty Elementary School students. Welcome. Welcome. We have another school, but we're going to, before we do other introductions, we have one more team. Let's get the senator from Baltimore City and Baltimore County. The senator from the 40th may vote red on this one. We'll see.
Colleagues, before you have the Black Knights, the basketball team, the men's basketball team for Baltimore City College. My son graduated from Baltimore City College in 2016. I also have a son that graduated from that other school. Last season, in double overtime, during the state finals, the Black Knights, who had won their 2022 regional championship, were narrowly defeated. So they came back, and they called this the Revenge Tour, led by Omar Smith, who has been the coach since 2017, and he himself was a player, and he led the program to 2 state semifinals, including the state's first appearance in a championship in 1998. So this storied group diligently fought every day, brought to every practice, every game, a determination to win. And they won. They defeated Damascus High School 67-54. And and of note, they are the first Baltimore City team to produce 2 undefeated state championships since the city schools joined the association in 1992. It's the first time was in 2014. Additionally, their 20-0 record, they are undefeated, has now made the Black Knights the 14th city team to go undefeated since 1956. Colleagues, please join me in congratulating these young people, their coaches, their support system, and the great work they are doing, and the positive light that they are shining on the great city of Baltimore.
All right, the clerk will read the resolution in full.
Be it hereby known to all that the Senate of Maryland offers its sincerest congratulations to Baltimore City College men's varsity basketball team. In recognition of winning the 3A Maryland State Basketball Championship, we applaud your outstanding season and wish you many more. Congratulations. The entire membership extends its best wishes on this memorable occasion and directs this resolution be presented on this 29th day of March, 2023.
The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Those polygrads out there have some bitterness. If so, the clerk will take the call. With 45 votes, the gentlemen of the Baltimore City men's varsity basketball team, congratulations not only on your championship, but your 20-0 season. Congratulations, great student athletes. We celebrate you and hope that you do just as well on the court and in the classroom. Congratulations.
Mr. President, I omitted the managers of the team, Mackenzie and Amaya. Would you raise your hand? These are the managers of this great team.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you all. Thank you all. Yes, Chair recognizes the Senator from Montgomery County.
Thank you so much, Mr. President. Which of you is Marcus? All right, Marcus. So a former counsel in the Senate, Sarah Fidler, who we all know and adore, has been teaching at this wonderful school, and she's been in touch with me and probably other senators bragging about you, Marcus, and all of the wonderful students there. So the president already referenced not just your athletic prowess, but your academic work, and so keep up the good work and treat your substitute teachers well, because they're brilliant and they love you. Thank you, Mr. President.
Excellent. Welcome. Thank you for that addition. We're honored by your presence and appreciate you all. Keep up the great work. Keep up the great work. Thanks for being here. Excellent. All right, as the folks from City College are leaving, we also have another group of students here today who I had a chance to meet very briefly. We have the SGA of Graceland Park Elementary School in the 46th District. They're in the gallery behind them. If we could please give them a warm Senate welcome. Thank you all for being here. They're going to have a great day in Annapolis today, a great day today. All right, other introductions. Yes, Chair recognizes the Senator from the 27th District.
Yes, Mr. President and colleagues, a couple of announcements from the Veterans Caucus. First announcement, tomorrow morning, 9:45 on the front steps. All members of the Veterans Caucus, we're looking to take a photo along with our colleagues in the House. So 9:45 on the front steps tomorrow morning. Secondly, Mr. President, permission to use a member's name.
Senator may proceed.
Mr. President, if I could have Senator Benjamin Brooks stand up for a second. Today, members, colleagues, is National Vietnam Veterans War Veterans Day. As the only member of our Senate caucus who served in that theater, we want to honor you as we honor that day today. So on behalf of us and those of us who served and those of us who didn't serve, but that are free because you have done that, we want to honor you today. So.
Thank you, sir, for your service. Senator from 10th District.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I really want to thank you, sir, for that. You know, it was a difficult. I'm good. Yeah, it was a difficult war, you know, and it's been 52 years this month since I got back in country, you know. But we lost 58,000 comrades in that war. 47,000 was due to combat, you know. But you know, my mom told us, she said, you don't have a pity party. You played it the hand that you dealt, and you move forward, you know. And having friends, you know, recognize that, you know, and it means a lot. It means a tremendous amount. And I'd like for all of those in here who don the uniform, would you please stand with me? Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Also, if there's a husband, a brother, a father, or mother who's had that uniform on, would you please stand as well? Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate this. This means a lot. All right. Thanks, Mr. President.
You mean a lot to us. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Yes, Senator from District 6.
Thank you, Mr. President. I also would like an opportunity to honor our Vietnam veteran, because there's one thing that did not happen to our Vietnam veterans. They weren't welcomed home. They were the ones that were really treated very badly when they came back. So my good friend, and if I could use his name, Mr. President, my good friend, Senator Brooks, I hope everyone here shows their love and their appreciation of your sacrifice. And I want to personally tell you, welcome home. God bless you.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator. All right. Yes, Senator from the 33rd District.
Thank you, Mr. President. To follow up on the kind remarks earlier, I also want to wish our Veterans Caucus Chair a very happy birthday. Permission to use the Senator's name?
Sarah, may proceed.
Happy birthday, Senator Jackson.
Happy birthday, Senator. No better gift than to be right here, right now. No better gift. Chair, recognizes Senator from Montgomery County.
Thank you, Mr. President. Difficult to follow that. I have a guest in the gallery. It appears to be Kensington Day here in Annapolis. My constituent from Kensington, she's a precinct leader and wonderful advocate. Please welcome Barbara Mullets.
Welcome, welcome. Thanks for joining us today. That's great. All right, any further introductions? Yes, Senator from Prince George's.
Thank you, Mr. President. Wanted to take a moment to welcome on the floor, and would you give a warm Senate welcome to first my sister, who is Pat's sister, Helena Moore. Would you stand and let them see you? And my nephew, Maurice Moore, and my niece, Courtney Moore. They're with us today. If you would give them a Senate welcome. Thank you for coming.
Welcome. Welcome. Appreciate you all. Excellent. All right, any further introductions before we jump in? If not, so be considered the reading of the journal from the prior legislative day. We have a message from the House. This is report number 30. Clerk will read the bills.
House Bill 755, Delegate Cardin, Estates and Trusts Registered Domestic Partnership Rules. House Bill 9.
Majority Leader moves. So be considered the reading of the bills. The bills will be referred to the Rules Committee. Let's start today with the Committee on Finance. This is report number 27. Clerk will read the first bill.
House Bill 48, Delegate Bagnall, Maryland Medical Assistance Program, Collaborative Care Model Service Implementation Reimbursement Expansion, favorable.
Chair recognizes the Senator from Montgomery County as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, colleagues. House Bill 48 is identical to Senate Bill 101, which passed the Senate unanimously earlier this session. The bill repeals the Collaborative Care Pilot Program and instead requires the Maryland Department of Health to provide reimbursement for services provided in accordance with the collaborative care model statewide in primary care settings that provide health care services to Medicaid recipients. There are no amendments. I move the adoption of the favorable committee report.
All right, floor leader moves to the adoption of the favorable committee report. On the report, any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, House Bill 48 is ordered passed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
House Bill 278, Delegate Collison, Health Occupations Clinical Nurse Specialist Prescribing, favorable.
Chair recognizes the Senator from the 20th District as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senators, House Bill 278 is identical to Senate Bill 213, which passed the Senate unanimously earlier this session. The bill authorizes a clinical nurse specialist to practice as a clinical nurse specialist for the purpose of prescribing drugs and durable medical equipment. The bill designates a clinical nurse specialist as an authorized prescriber under the Maryland Pharmacy Act and specifies that practice as a CNS is governed by the rules and regulations adopted by the Maryland Board of Nursing. There are no amendments. There is no fiscal impact. And, Mr. President, I move the adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the favorable committee report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, House Bill 278 is ordered passed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
House Bill 279, Delegate Cullison, Prescription Board Affordability Board, upper payment limits, favorable. This is an emergency bill.
Chair of the committee as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, House Bill 279 is the exact cross-file to Senate Bill 202, which the Senate passed earlier this session. This is the bill that deals with the Prescription Drug Board. There was a provision in the law that expired in January of this year that this related to their ability to look at upper payment limits and set upper payment limits. So this bill just extends that time. And so there are no amendments on the bill. And so, Mr. President, I move the adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the favorable committee report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, House Bill 279 is hereby ordered passed to third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
House Bill 505, Delegate Rogers, Elevator Safety, Privately Owned Single-Family Residential Elevators, Inspection and Registration Requirements, favorable.
Chair recognizes Chair of the committee as the floor leader.
Thank you again, Mr. President. House Bill 505 is the same bill as Senate Bill 198, which passed the Senate. This bill requires that elevators newly installed in privately owned single-family residents be subject to a final acceptance inspection conducted by a state elevator inspector. There are no amendments. I move the adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the favorable committee report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, House Bill 505 is hereby ordered passed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
House Bill 705, Delegate A. Jones, Declaration of Rights, to Reproductive Freedom, favorable.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 33rd District as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. House Bill 705 is identical to Senate Bill 798, which the Senate passed earlier this session. The bill is a proposed constitutional amendment that, if approved by the voters at the next general election, enshrines in the Declaration of Rights an individual's fundamental right to reproductive freedom, including but not limited to the ability to make and effectuate decisions to prevent, continue, or end one's own pregnancy. The proposed constitutional amendment prohibits the state from directly or indirectly denying, burdening, or abridging the right unless justified by a compelling state interest achieved by the least restrictive means. There are no amendments. I move the adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the favorable committee report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, House Bill 705 is ordered passed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
House Bill 775, the Speaker, Public Safety, Emergency Management, Consumer Protections Against Price Gouging, favorable.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 28th District as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senators, House Bill 775 is the same as Senate Bill 542, the anti-price gouging bill, which passed the Senate. The bill authorizes prohibits a person from selling an essential good or service, including a repair or reconstruction service, identified by the governor for a price that exceeds a 15% threshold during and in some circumstances after a declared state of emergency. There are no amendments, and Mr. President, I move the adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the favorable committee report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, House Bill 775 is hereby ordered passed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
House Bill 777, the Speaker, Cigarettes Wholesalers Disclosure of Information, favorable.
This is the jackpot bill. Chair recognizes the senator from the 28th.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. House Bill 777 is the same as Senate Bill 541, which passed the Senate. The bill requires licensed cigarette wholesalers to submit complete and accurate information in the form and manner prescribed by the Comptroller's Office. There are no amendments, and I move the adoption of a favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the favorable committee report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, House Bill 777 is hereby ordered passed for third reading. I don't think we had a Senate Bill 777 on the floor. We're going to figure out what that one was. All right, clerk, read the next bill.
House Bill 812, Delegate Rosenberg, Health, Reproductive Health Services, Protected Information and Insurance Requirements, favorable.
Chair recognizes the Chair of the Committee as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. House Bill 812 is identical to Senate Bill 786, which the Senate passed earlier this session. This bill establishes protections related to the disclosure of information about reproductive health by health information exchanges and electronic health networks. The bill prohibits these information exchanges and networks from disclosing certain information about procedures, medication, and related codes for abortion care and other sensitive health services to a treating provider or business entity or other information exchange network. The bill also prohibits a custodian of public records from disclosing identifying information related to certain health care providers and makes a technical clarification regarding insurance coverage requirements for abortion care services. There are no amendments. I move the adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the favorable committee report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, House Bill 812 is hereby ordered passed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
House Bill 902, Delegate Pruski, Labor and Employment Workers' Compensation, Hernia, favorable.
Chair recognizes the Senator from Montgomery County as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, House Bill 902 is identical to Senate Bill 839, which passed the Senate unanimously earlier this session. The bill establishes that a hernia caused by repetitive trauma may be considered an occupational disease and may therefore be compensable, subject to current standards related to occupational diseases. There are no amendments. I move the adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the favorable committee report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, House Bill 902 is hereby ordered passed for third reading. We have another report, one Senate bill, small little bill out of finance, report number 28. Clerk will read the bill.
Senate Bill 516, Senator Feldman, Cannabis Reform, favorable with 17 amendments.
Chair recognizes the Chair of the Committee.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, Senate Bill 516 is an emergency bill that, among other things, establishes a licensing framework for the regulated sale of cannabis in the state, specifically by establishing the following cannabis business licenses. For standard licenses, the bill establishes 75 growers, 100 processors, and 300 dispensary licenses. For micro licenses, the bill establishes 100 each for growers and processors, and as amended, 10 micro dispensary licenses. The committee adopted, along with our colleagues in Budget and Tax, a 9% sales and use tax applicable to the sale of adult use cannabis, and the Office of Social Equity is created in the bill to encourage and assist participation in this newly established industry by social equity applicants. Finally, as amended, the industry will be regulated by the newly established Maryland Cannabis Administration. The committee adopted 17 amendments, which should be available on your floor system, and I'll summarize them now. Amendment number 1 is technical and alters the title of the bill. Amendment number 2 is technical and clarifying. It moves a definition and defines political subdivisions and specifically specifies requirements of 2 members of the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Cannabis Commission, and it alters the role of the Office of Social Equity regarding the Business Administration Fund. Amendment number 3 is clarifying, makes the Office of Social Equity Administrator of the it makes them the administrator of the Social Equity Partnership Grant Program, and it defines a social equity licensee for participation in the grant program, as well as adding some reporting requirements related to the continuing use of social equity requirements. Amendment number 4 that specifies that a cannabis registrant is not a delivery service and authorizes licensed dispensary businesses to operate under the same criteria as medical cannabis dispensaries. Amendment number 5 clarifies the definition of control to sell equity shares and requires a cannabis business that converts a medical license to comply with ownership restrictions, and it specifies labor standards for growers' employees. It also subjects owners and specified constitutional officers to state ethics laws and make some technical changes. Amendment number 6 phases in the authorized expansion of canopy for converting licenses and allows conversion fees to be paid in installments over an 18-month period. The amendment also alters the conversion fees for already licensed growers and sets those fees at 10% of the gross revenues for up to $2 million, but not less than $100,000. And it also has revenues up to $50,000 for social equity licenses. They're 50% less. And licensing and renewal fees are credited against conversion fees. So if someone is paying their installments for their conversion fees, they would be credited to their renewal fees. Amendment number 7 is clarifying, and it adjusts the round 2 licensing based on an ongoing disparity study, and we codify in the bill language related to the disparity study. Amendment number 8 limits the authority of local government to treat cannabis businesses different than other businesses with similar impact and prohibits a local government from taxing cannabis. It sets the distribution of, we increase the distribution of revenues to certain funds that were in the bill as introduced. So we increased to 35% the money for the Community Reinvestment and Repair Fund, 5% to the counties that we ask that they consider sharing with municipalities where there is a presence of a cannabis facility, 5% to a public health fund, and 5% to a business assistance fund. Amendment number 9 caps the amount of a qualified partnership grant and requires the banning of internet sales by the administration and the development of regulations regarding the age verification technology for consumers at dispensaries. It authorizes an existing licensed dispensary to continue delivering medical cannabis until January 1st, 2024. Sets up the number of micro-licensed dispensaries. We reduced that number from 75 to 10, and we require dispensaries to have shelf space for products from other non-affiliated growers and processors. We also provided a buffer zone in the bill to prevent clumping or too many locations in one area. We set loan amount limits for social equity businesses and increased the number of grower applicants under a specified litigation. Amendment number 10 removes unnecessary provisions already in state law. Amendment number 11 makes changes to the employment requirements of the executive director of the commission and alters the makeup of the advisory board and adult use on medical and adult use cannabis. 12 of 17. Okay. Amendment number 12 is clarifying and reduces the number of micro dispensaries to 10 overall and increases the number of dispensaries controlled by converted growers. In the bill as introduced, there was a limitation to 2 dispensaries by growers. As amended, we increased that number to 4 dispensaries, and we limited canopy growth to 20%. We allowed licensed cannabis businesses to put a sign on their property. We defined, I was going to try to pronounce it, cannabinol, whatever, THC. You all know what THC is, right? So we allowed for tinctures and defined THC, and we subject those products to regulation, and we struck provisions for on-site consumption to be in a restaurant. Amendments 13, 14, 15, and 16 are clarifying and require cannabis potency limits and packaging and labeling requirements. We altered advertising requirements, prohibited smoking of cannabis at on-site consumption businesses, and we established the Maryland Cannabis Administration. Amendment number 7 adds several uncodified provisions regarding various studies that will be required under the bill. And we also allowed HB2 growers to get dispensary licenses, and we allowed the HB2 processors to be entered into the social equity lottery without going through the pre-vetting process because they've already been vetted as cannabis processors for medicinal. With that, Mr. President, I move the adoption of the 17 committee amendments and the favorable committee report.
All right, the floor leader moves to the adoption of the 17 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the 17 amendments, any discussion? Chair recognizes the senator from the 42nd District on the amendments.
Thank you, Mr. President. I do have some questions. I wonder if the floor leader would be willing to stand and discuss them with me.
I believe so. Senator may proceed.
Sure.
Thank you. So I have a copy of a document called Cannabis Public Policy Consulting. The name of the document is Future Adult Use, Cannabis Demand, and Predictive Modeling, a Behavior Economic Study dated January 5, 2023. I understand the committee received this and had a briefing on this and is familiar with this document. Is that correct?
Yes, we received that probably back in January, so I can't say that I have it committed to memory, but I am
No, of
familiar.
course not. So I just want to ask a couple of questions about some of the statements in the document. On page 2, it says total cannabis demand in Maryland during the first year of adult use implementation is estimated to be 824 million grams of cannabis across all possible sources, or 1.8 million pounds. Did the Finance Committee have any reason to disagree with this estimate?
No, the committee didn't actually take up those estimates or those numbers. We actually considered the bill before us and didn't get into the weight or volume in that way.
Well, then did the Finance Committee arrive at an estimated number of pounds of marijuana that would be needed to satisfy the market? Independently of the study?
No, but I will say that in work that happened during the interim, and several members of the Senate worked in partnership with our colleagues over in the House, we did have presentations on those issues, and that led to the introduction of the bill with the current number of licenses that we've made available. So those things were considered as the original bill took shape.
Okay, would it be fair to say that the number of 824 million grams per year is not out of the realm of what you would expect under the circumstances?
Right, and my understanding through our work, again, in the initial crafting of the bill, is that the numbers of growers, processors, dispensaries in the bill are consistent with those numbers and those recommendations.
Thank you very much for that. All right, now moving to page 15 of the bill, there are a couple of tables there that predict how much illicit cannabis purchases will occur even after this bill is passed. And the tables I'm looking at predict between 250 and 500 dispensaries, and I think we're talking about 300. So the 300 is within that range and suggests an effective tax rate of 10%, which is 1% more than the tax rate that you're putting into the bill. So these numbers ought to be pretty close. They indicate that at the end of the first year, 36% of marijuana sales will continue to be black market sales, and it also indicates that by the end of the fifth year, more than a quarter of the marijuana sales will remain black market sales. Is that the estimate of the committee as well?
The committee did not produce any new data in terms of the estimate of illicit market sales. What we did is took the recommendations of the experts in terms of standing up the industry and tried to balance lessons learned from other states where the illicit market did not reduce at the rates that they would have hoped for, and considered that when creating the provisions of the bill that you have before you.
Okay, so it's fair to say that this bill, the implementation of this bill will not end the black market in Maryland. There will remain a healthy black market for marijuana sales even after this bill is passed and implemented.
Well, it is our hope, and through the studies that I mentioned when I think we were on amendment, I don't know, number 13, 14, 15, 16, I referred to some provisions related to studies, and one of the things that we clearly plan to do is continue to study the market and make sure that we are tracking those things so that we can make modifications to our legal adult use cannabis network and framework as needed based on the information we gather. We won't know until we get those studies and see what happens in Maryland specifically, but we did take into account lessons learned from other states.
Sounds very sensible. Let me go lastly in this document to page 20, where they have a table providing for scaling supply to meet demand. And they indicate that if we do achieve 824 million grams of product each year, which would satisfy the market, that in order to accomplish that, in the 5th year out, we would need 1.7 million square feet of canopy in order to satisfy the market. Did the committee agree with those recommendations or those estimates?
You know, I don't know that we looked at the specific total canopy space as it pertains to that chart in the report that you're referencing. I do know, again, that as the bills took shape during the interim, those studies were available, that information was available, and that's where we came up with the recommendations in the bill for the limits that we put on canopy size and what we authorized under the bill.
Would it be fair to say that the 1.7 million square feet of recommended canopy is at least in the ballpark of what the committee used as its operating assumption?
Yes, we believe that the numbers in the bill will get us to those recommended numbers.
Okay, now I'm taking a look at the bill itself on page 37 of my reprint. And I don't have unfortunately I don't have the section number, but it provides that for growers, each grower can have not more than 300 square feet of indoor canopy. You recall that's part of the bill?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay, and then on the following page, it indicates that under the bill, we're going to have as many as 75 grower licenses, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so I, with my mathematical inability, multiplied 75 times 300,000 square feet, and it came out to 22,500,000 square feet of canopy, a whole lot more than the 1.7 million recommended in the report. Why do we have this disparity between what was recommended and what is going to be made available under this bill?
Well, I think your calculation assumes that every grower will maximize or use the total available 300,000 square feet. Our experience with medicinal cannabis, our experience looking at other states is that even with the maximum number that we've allowed, that we don't expect that each one of the growers will get to that maximum amount. And the commission will control how the licenses are distributed. So again, we'll have the benefit of studies that pertain to the market. As the new licenses roll out, they will have data that speaks to whether or not, remember it's up to 300 licenses for growers, so they don't have to distribute all of them.
Up to 300,000 square feet.
Correct.
And up to 75 licenses. Right.
Correct.
Okay. So I've got information here from Massachusetts. Now, our population in Maryland is 6.2 million. In Massachusetts, the population is 6.9, so they have somewhat more people than we do. In Massachusetts, the limited canopy size is 3.2 million. It's not 22.5 million. And here's what I have written about what has happened in Massachusetts with only 3 million of canopy. It says the Massachusetts Cannabis Control Commission recently met and expressed worry at a public meeting with several newly issued licenses in the pipeline to join the already oversaturated supply market. The CCC noted the price of wholesale cannabis had already fallen 50%, and the executive director recognized that many of the recently licensed cultivators may not be economically viable. Massachusetts is currently struggling with an oversupply issue, driving down prices and putting cultivators out of business. Companies are operating at razor-thin margins, and many can't compete and are forced to shutter business or sell their licenses. And that, once again, was at 3.2 million square feet of canopy, far less than the 22.5 million square feet that's being authorized here in Maryland. What will happen? Is there someone in a position to deal with this problem if we end up having too much canopy and driving the prices down and driving the operators out of business?
Yes, and that's a great question. Thank you for that. So in the bill, we established a Maryland Cannabis Administration that will be responsible for the regulations and the licenses that are issued under the bill. And so this will be the same administration that I referenced that will have access to the reports and studies. We will manage, as we roll out each of the rounds of licenses, how many are distributed based on the market and based on the needs of Maryland. And we come back every year if we need to make modifications in the number that we've allowed. So if we find that we need to increase that number, we're able to. And if we need to reduce that number, then our strongly staffed Cannabis Administration will have the ability to reduce that number just by not releasing additional licenses.
Great. Thank you for those reassuring remarks. Let's change focus now and move over to page 56 of the bill, where it says a cannabis license granted under this title is not transferable except as provided in this section. It goes on to say in subsection C1, a cannabis license, including a cannabis licensee whose license was converted in accordance with 36401 of this title, may not transfer ownership or control of the license for a period of at least 5 years following licensure. So can you walk me through what's the purpose of this section? Why the moratorium on transfers of ownership interests?
No, that's a great question, and the committee spent some time, as did the work during the interim and over the previous couple of years, considering this. What I will tell you is our existing medicinal licenses had a 3-year limit, and so the desire is to have Maryland businesses participating in this new industry that we're standing up in Maryland. It is going to require an investment from the state in terms of the commission's interaction with these entities, and so we felt that 5 years was a reasonable amount of time. And for those industries that, or those businesses that would like to sell some shares of equity shares in their business to get access to capital, we provided for that in the bill. But ultimately, we felt a 5-year period was reasonable for those businesses to stand up, get operating or continue operating, and establish the market so that we can gather that data that I referenced in previous responses.
Well, you just mentioned the existing marijuana licensees, so I want to ask you about them. They have already been locked up for at least 3 years, but this bill imposes a second lockup period on them, this time lasting 5 years. Why was the decision made to impose a second lockup period on people whose licenses have already been locked up for 3 years?
Those existing licenses actually have the ability to sell if they choose not to convert to this new dual license that is adult use and medicinal. So they could choose to sell now without converting. The new 5-year period is related to the conversion license that is outlined in the bill, and the provisions that allow for the phase-in of payments and all of that to manage the market. We felt that 5 years was a reasonable amount of time.
All right,
so they could sell.
Let me talk about the existing dispensary licenses. There are about 101 of those right now. And under current law, the owner of a dispensary can purchase up to 3 additional dispensaries. So under this bill, the minute that these dispensary licenses are converted, none of the existing licensees can acquire even 1 additional dispensary because of the prohibitions on transfer. The existing dispensaries are not permitted to transfer their licenses for 5 years. So one dispensary cannot buy another or a second or the third to bring them up to 4 dispensaries. Why was that decision made?
Between now and July, they can go up to 4, is my understanding?
Up to 4?
Yes.
Right.
They can convert up to 4. The bill as introduced had 2, but as we passed it out of committee, it goes up to 4, and they have between now and July.
So you're saying they have to scramble and get it done between now and July?
I'm saying they have to do whatever they'd like to do to get up to 4 licenses, and the bill gives them a few months to take care of that.
Okay, and it is true that once the conversion occurs, the existing dispensary licensees are precluded from selling their businesses for 5 years, correct?
I'm following. Can you repeat your question?
So yeah, once the bill passes, and once they convert to the new licenses, the existing dispensary licensees are precluded from selling their businesses for 5 years.
Correct.
So these are private business owners who in many cases have invested hundreds of millions of dollars in significant infrastructure. I think I'm talking mostly about the growers and the processors at this point. They've created thousands of jobs and raised capital in accordance with the existing regulatory regime, only to be learned that they're being forced to pay huge fees to stay in business and convert, and they can't deduct their expenses, and now they're being subjected to a longer lockdown period. Does this sound fair?
I think the question that you're asking is whether or not the provisions in the bill allow existing licensees to sell, and they can choose not to sell between now and July when the bill takes effect. Ultimately, those businesses operated in a climate where There was a referendum by the voters in November of last year, and those owners of businesses were aware that that provision passing would create a new framework for working in this space moving forward. And so these are the provisions that we have before us, and they can operate based on those provisions and either choose to sell or choose to convert to a dual medicinal and adult use license and stay in the business, or they can continue to serve and wait the 5 years that are outlined in the bill and then sell.
So currently we have owners of 4 dispensaries, and most of those owners are large multi-state or operations which are publicly traded. Isn't that correct?
I don't know that they're all publicly traded. Some are and some aren't.
Some are and some aren't. But
Yeah,
they're,
I have one in
but
my
the-
district that's
But the
local.
4 are mostly owned by multi-state corporations. They're not locally owned, in other words. Most of the 4 licensed dispensary
I'll
situations.
agree with that. I understand that that's accurate.
Yeah, okay. So what we're doing, aren't we, with this bill, is we're giving them a huge advantage for 5 years because they're the big kahunas, and the locally owned operations of a single dispensary or 2 dispensaries cannot expand to the 4 dispensary situation, and therefore they're being prejudiced by this bill.
My understanding is that current licensees can go to 4. So,
But they can't acquire one because the one they want to acquire under the lockup can't sell. Isn't that right? For 5 years, the owner of the current dispensary that would like to sell can't sell, and therefore the other one that wants to acquire can't acquire.
again, we're on March of 2023. They have until July, and they can sell. But we don't want too much market consolidation to happen, so we're implementing a bill that we think levels the playing field, and we do have additional rounds of licenses coming up in January of 2024.
Okay. Let me quickly touch 3 other subjects. First of all, consumption limitations. The only limitation on consumption I could find in the bill, on admittedly a quick read last night of 88 pages, was the limit on on-site consumption. What about someone who's living in a townhouse with a party wall with someone next door, and they can smell the smell and it's driving them batty because they can't stand the odor that's coming through the party wall? Does this bill do anything to protect such a resident from the smell that is arriving uninvited in that person's residential facility?
Understood, understood. So existing law is that common ownership communities, those groups that have covenants and bylaws, can establish rules. And so that the bill did not make any changes to that. Those laws are still in existence, and those contracts with homeowners are still in existence.
Well, in part of my
And there's also, my understanding, I apologize, is that there's another bill in another committee that takes that provision up. So we set up the framework, but there are other bills that are
We'll deal with that.
rolling around.
Right.
that-
There are areas in my vicinity. One, the senator from the 43rd, I think it's the 43rd district, currently represents, called Rogers Forge. It's not a planned community with bylaws, and there are lots of party walls all the way through Rogers Forge. When I represented Rogers Forge up until January of this year, I would get a number of telephone calls from people complaining about the odor that's seeping through the walls from the people next door. So you're saying a different bill takes that up?
A different bill takes that up. That's not in this bill.
Okay. Second, driving under the influence of marijuana. Does this bill do anything with respect to driving under the influence?
Again, impaired driving is already in statute, in law, and we dealt with that in a bill that passed last year.
Okay. And then thirdly, there's a question about Maryland's hemp industry. I got a call this morning from someone who alleged that if we pass this bill, it will put Maryland's hemp industry out of business. How would you respond to that?
The committee adopted language that basically allowed for the continued use of non-intoxicating hemp. The bill does prohibit this unregulated intoxicating hemp. But many of the businesses that we heard from in our committee hearing really asked for protections for those businesses that are using hemp products that have lower THC, which I won't try to define again, but non-intoxicating amounts. And so the bill does allow those businesses to continue to operate and provides for that. It's just the intoxicating version that we prohibit.
Terrific. Thank you so much for your answers to my questions.
Thank you for your questions.
Thank you, Senator. All right, Chair recognizes the Senator from the 35th District on the amendments.
Thank you, Mr. President. Would the floor leader please yield for a few questions?
Will the floor leader yield?
Sure.
Senator may proceed.
Thank you. Could you distinguish for the members the difference between the delivery of medical and recreational cannabis?
Right. So basically, in the bill, there are medicinal deliveries that are happening now. And so in the bill, we allowed those businesses to continue to operate until January of 2024. The delivery of non-medicinal cannabis was provided for in the bill as introduced through micro dispensaries, which would basically be non-brick and mortar entities that could be dispensaries of adult use recreational cannabis. The bill as introduced had 75 licenses for those micro dispensaries. The committee reduced that number to one round of 10 micro dispensaries. And it is thought that in the studies that your colleague referenced, that our colleague referenced from across the state, and accessibility in an effort to reduce the illicit market, we wanted to provide the availability for those who might not have access to a brick and mortar location. That was the intent of those micros. Also to allow businesses to participate that may not be able to get a brick and mortar location.
Thank you for that. And then I wanted to follow up, if I may, we yield for another question?
Just one. Just kidding.
Only one, but it might be a little bit longer one this time. Public safety is a concern. I read in some of the testimony that instances where states legalize cannabis, car crashes increased by 6%, fatal car crashes by as much as 4%. I think in some of those other states, they designated some of the funds that come in from the legalization to go towards emergency services, because I think we could probably all agree that this is going to create a greater stress on our EMS systems, which are already under great stress now as they look for both paid and volunteer folks to staff ambulances, rescue trucks, fire trucks all over the state. So I noticed there was one potential amendment, and I wanted to see if this was addressed, that dealt with the MSOF funding. And what that fund takes care of is such things, MSP Aviation Command, Maryland Fire and Rescue Institute, Shock Trauma, Maryland Institute for Emergency Services, and the Senator Amos Fire, Rescue, and Ambulance Fund that helps purchase new equipment and capital improvements such as buildings. So did the committee in any of these amendments address some of this funding where it would go to some of these emergency services that need this money?
So the committee did not determine did not take up that amendment specifically in our voting session. I can tell you that the state of Maryland, through our Budget and Tax Committee, has been working to ensure that necessary funding goes to those areas that you just defined. We did not change the structure of the bill to provide funding in those areas. But again, this is something that we can always take up as a General Assembly through our budget and tax process moving forward, especially now that question 1 passed and we have more authority over the state's budget.
Okay, thank you for answering those questions.
You can have one more if you need it.
No.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. President, just a quick statement on the amendments. You know, just to follow up on that funding for emergency services, they are supported, that MSOF that I mentioned, supported by a $29 biannual vehicle registration fee surcharge that needs to be increased every 10 years. It's sensitive to inflation. The last increase was 2013. As we look for ways to fund emergency services, I think this would be an ideal way to do that, because they're projected to be hit insolvency by FY24. Now, I trust my friends on Budget and Tax will work on this issue as well, but I think we have a perfect potential vehicle here to address this. This is would fall under the subject. So also there's a lot of amendments that were looked through here. There's a lot of changes from the original bill. I appreciate, the hemp growers, that question was answered. I know they had some concerns with the original bill. There's still a lot left to look forward to here, and I'd also like to look harder at this emergency services funding. So at the appropriate time, I would ask that we would lay this over under the rules.
All right, I think now's the appropriate time. So, all right, senators move to lay the bill over under the rule. The motion is in order. The bill and the amendment will lie over under the rule. All right, let's go to the Committee on Education, Energy, and the Environment. This is report number 32. Clerk will read the bill.
Senate Bill 526, Senator Elfreth, Natural Resources, Forest Preservation and Retention, favorable with 7 amendments.
Chair recognizes the senator from Prince George. The President Pro Tem is the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 526 updates and strengthens state law relating to forest preservation and retention. Broadly, the bill updates statewide policy goals and definitions related to forest land and tree canopy, alters afforestation and reforestation requirements under the state's Forest Conservation Act, provides greater flexibility to local jurisdictions in designing and implementing local forest conservation programs, and provides greater protection to priority forests. Just to start, just so that you are a couple of words that are in there that folks may not be familiar with, because I know I wasn't. Afforestation, and afforestation means you're planting trees on land that has not recently been covered with forest. So that's afforestation. Reforestation is the process of replanting trees on areas that have been affected by natural disturbances, wildfires, drought, insects, etc. Unnatural and then also unnatural ones like logging, mining, agricultural clearing, and what we're really talking about here, which is development. Now, there were 7 committee amendments. The first amendment was technical. The second amendment clarifies definitions and goals related to the state's policy of increasing both forest land in the state and land in the state covered by tree canopy. Amendment 3 clarifies and alters exemptions for the Forest Conservation Act, including partial exemptions for transit-oriented development and the construction of multi-family housing. It also establishes considerations for local forest conservation programs and establishes certain public notice and judicial review requirements for forest conservation plans. Amendment number 4 alters for local jurisdictions that choose not to adopt alternative requirements, reforestation calculations to require 1/2 acre of plantings for every 1 acre of non-priority forest cleared in priority funding areas, and 1 acre of plantings for every 1 acre cleared everywhere else. The amendment also establishes additional afforestation and reforestation requirements for unforested riparian buffers. And so again, just for the riparian buffers, those are strips of vegetation that are planted next to streams or other water bodies. Amendment number 5 alters requirements related to the review of alternative afforestation, reforestation, and preservation requirements proposed by local jurisdictions, and clarifies provisions allowing municipal corporations to use certain alternative forest mitigation methods, such as the restoration of degraded forest and the establishment of planted environmental site design practices. Amendment number 6 alters criteria and requirements for forests considered priority for retention and protection, and alters restrictions on the area where forest mitigation banks may be established. The amendment also strikes provisions that would have expanded eligibility for state forest conservation and management program in certain counties. Just for the body to know, mitigation banking in this case is the preservation, enhancement, restoration, or creation of forest which offsets or compensates expected adverse impacts to similar nearby bodies. So the goal is to replace the exact function and value of the habitat that would be adversely affected by a proposed activity or project, in this case development. Amendment number 7 extends the time period for spending down forest conservation funds and requires the Department of Natural Resources to establish a work group to evaluate and recommend incentives for private landowners to conserve forests. The amendment also adds various uncodified provisions and delays the effective date of most of the bill's changes to July 1st, 2024.
Colleagues, as you can hear, this is a really very, very big bill, and this bill really was worked on very, very hard to get to a real good place of consensus amongst all the stakeholders. And with that in mind, the bill passed the committee unanimously. I move adoption of the 7 committee amendments and the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the 7 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objections? Yes, Chair recognizes the senator from the 37th District on the amendments.
Yeah, just a quick question, and I apologize I didn't bring this to you before today's discussion. But with regard to the work groups that are putting together, is one of them focusing on land banks and conservation land banks? Because I've received some concerns about the way those are operating.
Yes. So as you are probably aware, because you've mentioned it, there is at this point a sunset on the land banks, as I mentioned. This bill does extend that period and does look at what the future of those will be.
Thank you.
All right. On the amendments, any further discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the 7 committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report, as amended, is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 526 is hereby ordered printed for 3rd reading. We have a report out of Judicial Proceedings. This is report number 26. Clerk will read the bill.
Senate Bill 971, Senator James, Real Property Recordation Procedures, favorable.
Chair recognizes the bill sponsor as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 971 requires the clerks of the court and the State Department of Assessment and Taxation to work together on procedures for the electronic filing and recording of documents and the electronic payment of fees and taxes. And in furtherance of that, directs county tax collectors or those with similar responsibilities to establish procedures and provide certificates setting forth all the taxes, fees, and assessments due to counties and municipalities for a given property. There are no amendments. There's no opposition. You received a unanimous vote in committee. I move for the favorable adoption of the committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the favorable committee report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 971 is hereby ordered printed for 3rd reading. Let's do a quorum call before 3rd reading calendar.
Mr. President?
Has everyone, could we ring the bells, Madam Clerk? All right. The clerk will take the call. With 45 members in the chamber and a quorum being present, the Senate of Maryland remains in session. We have 3rd reading calendar number 59. These are Senate bills. Clerk will read the first bill.
Senate Bill 87, Senator Heddleman, Office of the Attorney General, Correctional Ombudsman Unit.
Senate Bill 87 is on 3rd reader for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote? Explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 45 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 87 having received a constitutional majority is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 186, Senator Kagan, Green and Renewable Energy for Nonprofit Organizations Loan Program and Fund.
Senate Bill 186 is on 3rd reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote? Explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 45 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 186 having received a constitutional majority is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 318, Senator Brooks, Healthy Indoor Air Quality Grant Program.
Senate Bill 318 is on 3rd reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote? Explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 44 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 318, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 530, Senator Klossmeyer Insurance, Maryland Automobile Insurance Fund Assessments.
Senate Bill 530 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 45 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 530, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 934, Senator Zucker, State Department of Education, Division of Rehabilitation Services, Funding and Staffing.
Senate Bill 934 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 45 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 934, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Chair recognizes the senator from the 35th.
Mr. President, could I change my vote on SB 87 from green to red, please?
87 from green to red. Any objections? Without objection, so ordered. Any additional? All right, we're going to pause there for the day. We've got a busy committees this afternoon, and we have some other activities happening. So let's start with the announcements for the chair of executive nominations.
Thank you, Mr. President. Executive noms will meet in the Executive Nominations Committee room at 12:40 for a vote. 12:40 today. Thank you.
12:40. All right. With that, Chair of Finance.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Finance will have bill hearings at 1 p.m. today, followed by a voting session. We do have some sponsor-only bills and some bills that will have full hearings, so it's going to be a lengthy afternoon.
All right. Chair of Education, Energy, and the Environment.
Thank you, Mr. President. That committee will meet at 1 p.m. for bill hearings, followed by a voting session.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Vice Chair of B&T.
B&T will meet at 1 o'clock for bill hearings.
1 o'clock. All right. Chair of Judicial Proceedings.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Judicial Proceedings Committee will meet today at 1 p.m. for bill hearings, followed by a voting session.
All right, 1 o'clock. Any other standing committee announcements? Select committee announcements? Delegation? Yes, Chair of Anne Arundel Delegation.
Thank you, Mr. President. I need the Anne Arundel delegation in the hall immediately after the floor for just a very quick vote on 2 House bills. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Chair of the Prince George's County Delegation.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. Prince George's County will meet today at 5 p.m. in the Neal Room. 5 p.m. Neal Room.
All right. Okay, just making sure. There was any other?
Mr. President.
One moment,
Mr. President.
please. Oh, yes, Senator from Baltimore County.
Yes, thank you,
We got 2 of
Mr.
them.
President.
It's all good. All good. We'll do Senator from District 8, then followed by 6.
It's a big county, so. But anyway, I just want to remind everyone about the NCSL meeting in my office today, and I hope that many of you can come. It starts at 5, and I don't know how long it's going to last, but I'll be there for quite a while, so
Excellent.
thank you.
Well, I will see you there. I'll see you there. Yes, Senator from District 6.
Special privilege, if I could, Mr. President.
Senator, may proceed.
As everybody knows, we had an important issue that come up, Mr. President. And we know the devastation that happened in East Palestine. And I believe we all prayed for those people and what happened up there. It was very serious. And we have a great understanding about that. When you have derailments, more than one, it's catastrophic. And so we prayed for those people, and we still do, because we know there's still a lot going on there. But I want to say, Mr. President, I thank this House, and I thank you for your unity. I thank you for fighting together, not as a party, but as a people. I thank our Baltimore County delegation when we got together and when we talked. I thank our Baltimore City delegation, and I thank you for your heart and for your head and your thoughts and how we work together. But I want to thank each and every person here, Mr. President, for their thoughtful words and for their standing that they stood strong, because in our heart we know we did the right thing. But I want to thank our mayor. I want to thank our mayor for doing the right thing for us and for our people and for our constituents. I want to commend him, but I want to commend every person in this room and the other house, You were very kind. As you know, in my district, we have a lot going on, especially our wastewater treatment plant. We are ongoing with that. But with your partnership, we continue to make a difference. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. All right. Any further announcements? Yes, Chair recognizes Senator from Montgomery County.
Thank you, Mr. President. On a happier note, and we are all grieving the terrible accident in Baltimore County, but on a happier note, may I have permission to use the senator's name?
Senator may proceed.
Thank you. She may not have been the mayor of Frederick, but our own Senator Karen Lewis Young was just named by the Daily Record as one of Maryland's top 100 women this year. The only senator this year to be added to that prestigious group. There are 2 members of the House, but we should congratulate our own Senator Lewis Young.
Wonderful. Thank you for acknowledging that. Very good. Thank you for bringing that to our attention, Senator. Thank you. That's wonderful. Congratulations. That's great. All right. Any further announcements before we adjourn? Okay. All right. Let's do a quorum call before we adjourn.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their presence? If so, the clerk will take the call. With 43 members in the chamber and a quorum being present, the Senate of Maryland remains in session. Chair recognizes the Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the Senate of Maryland stand adjourned until Thursday, March 30th at 10 a.m.
Without objection, so ordered. Have a phenomenal day, everyone.